Here are the top stories for today, April 27, 2021. The Philippines is closely monitoring the situation in India as it deals with a surge in COVID-19 cases as 2 OFWs died while 20 others contracted the disease in the South Asian nation. No let-up against corruption. The PACC says it will file cases against ranking government officials while others are undergoing lifestyle check. The country pays tribute to the heroism of Lapu-Lapu in the Battle of Mactan 500 years ago. President Rodrigo Duterte says frontliners in the COVID-19 pandemic embody the hero's valor. And improving public service, the push for the digitalization of government services continue amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Good day, I am William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. The government is keeping a close watch on the welfare of Filipinos in India. This as India grapples with a surge in COVID-19 cases worsened by a so-called double mutant strain. In a Laging Handa briefing, Philippine Ambassador to India Ramon Bagatsing Jr. says 2 Filipinos have died of COVID-19 on Monday, while 20 other OFWs have contracted the disease and are under isolation. Bagatsing says they are in constant communication with the infected OFWs to be able to provide support for them. The Philippine Embassy has yet to work on the repatriation of the deceased OFWs as there are no direct flights between Manila and New Delhi, while other countries have imposed a temporary travel ban on the South Asian country. India has launched mass cremations as COVID-19 deaths continue to soar, prompting lockdowns in major cities with hospitals dealing with a flood of patients. Meanwhile, Bagatsing said, under an agreement with local government units and the private sector, some 8 million doses of Bharat Biotech's Covaxin jabs are set to arrive by the end of May. The Philippines has also earlier secured 30 million doses of Novavax jabs manufactured by the Serum Institute of India.
So if everything goes well, 30 million yan that the Philippine government is buying, and hopefully by September this year, dadating yan. So that's 30 million and possibly a few other millions for the private sector.
The Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission is set to file cases against high-ranking government officials for alleged corruption. PACC formed the Task Force Lifestyle Check to dig deeper into the corruption complaints.
I think it's an assistant secretary at saka isa pong regional director. Assistant secretary, hindi pa siya USEC. So, assistant secretary.
Apo.
Tapos merong mga several undersecretaries na right now is undergoing lifestyle check. Again, Ma'am Rocky, this is the result of the intensified campaign of the President against corruption na amin pong pinatutupad. We've already finished, by this week, we'll be finished with the Big 4 most notorious agencies. Big 3, tapos po yung tatlo, yung Bureau of Customs, DPWH, BIR last week.
PACC Chair Greco Belhica said they are just waiting for the opening of the Office of the Ombudsman, which is currently on lockdown, to file cases against these corrupt officials.
We will be concentrating on high-value targets. Ibig sabihin po, ito yung matataas na presidential appointees na hanggang ngayon ay pa rin tumigil sa korupsyon. Kaya nga po sinabi ko, pagbukas ng ombudsman, we will start filing cases dahil marami na po kami nakabangko, stacked up na po sa office, and every week we are planning to file cases and discuss to you in details pag ito po ay public record.
Meanwhile, the PACC and the Anti-Red Tape Authority, or ARTA, joined hands in intensifying government efforts against red tape and corruption. The Memorandum of Agreement aims to align and integrate their functions in handling complaint cases and violations. PACC will handle the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, the unlawful acquisition of property by a public officer or employee, and the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for Public Officials and Employees, among others, committed by presidential appointees. Meanwhile, ARTA will focus on violations of the Ease of Doing Business Act committed by any public official or employee. Malacanang maintains that the 1 million COVID-19 infections in the country is not negative reflection of pandemic response of the government. Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque said the government is managing the new variants rather well.
Huwag niyo pong titignan lamang ang 1 million cases. Unang-una, halos 900,000 na po ang gumaling dyan. Kung ikukumpara mo ito sa buong daigdig, bumaba pa po ang ranking natin. Ibig sabihin, mas humusay pa yung ating ranking sa buong mundo.
Roque said the Philippines currently ranks 26th in the world in terms of total COVID-19 infections based on data from Johns Hopkins and the World Health Organization. He also explained that an increase in COVID-19 cases cannot be avoided amid new virus variants and limited vaccine supply.
Itong paglobo po ng numero, hindi lang po Pilipinas yan. Yung ranking natin na bumaba pa tayo, patunay po na mas maraming kaso doon sa mga iba't ibang mga bansa.
The country's total number of COVID-19 cases reached the 1 million mark yesterday after 1 year and 4 months since the Philippines recorded its first COVID-19 case. Total recoveries have reached almost 915,000. 5 local government units in the National Capital Region are chosen for the initial rollout of the Sputnik V COVID-19 vaccine. These are Manila, Taguig, Makati, Parañaque, and Muntinlupa. Each city will get an initial 3,000 doses of the jabs, or a total of 15,000 doses. Testing czar Vince Dizon said the 5 cities have storage facilities with a temperature not exceeding -18 degrees Celsius. The pilot rollout is needed to assess and review other logistical requirements. The 15,000 doses of Sputnik V jabs were initially scheduled to arrive on April 25, but logistical constraints moved the delivery to tomorrow, April 28. Dizon said the delays in vaccine deliveries are due to limited supply worldwide. Hospitals are expected to be declogged with the opening of the Eva Macapagal Super Terminal Isolation Facility in South Harbor, Manila. This will cater to asymptomatic COVID-19 patients as well as those who have mild and moderate symptoms. The treatment facility was earlier used as quarantine center for seafarers and overseas Filipino workers. Attorney J. Daniel Santiago of the Philippine Ports Authority said the isolation facility is equipped with the necessary equipment to make sure patients are properly taken care of. Meanwhile, Office of the Civil Defense Undersecretary Ricardo Halad said they will continue providing necessary assistance to healthcare workers and other essential personnel who will man the isolation facility. The OCD will also provide food to patients and healthcare workers and will shoulder the accommodation of healthcare workers who will be on duty. Halad said the budget will be sourced out from the National Risk Reduction and Management Funds once the Bayanihan 2 funds are fully utilized. While more local chief executives laud the setting up of community pantries in their areas, the government reminds organizers to ensure the safety of the people by strictly enforcing the minimum health protocols. The details from Chris Mundo.
With the increasing number of organizers of makeshift community pantries all over the country, Health Secretary Francisco Duque is urging them to coordinate first with the local government units. He said this is to ensure that the minimum health protocols, such as wearing of face masks and face shields, as well as social distancing, are being followed during such activities. Meanwhile, NCR Mayor said they support community pantries subject to health protocols and urges organizers to coordinate first in the city to ensure that minimum health protocols will be observed at all times. Meanwhile, National Task Force Against COVID-19 advisor Dr. Teodoro Herbosa suggests the system of house-to-house distribution rather than setting up tables on streets and making people line up to get free goods. He said people flocking to a community pantry is a potential super spreader activity. And amid remarks of some organizers that they felt threatened when policemen went to get their contact numbers and affiliations, Interior Secretary Eduardo Año said it is just normal for the cops to get the information as reference in case an untoward incident happens during these activities. Año, however, said that name, contact number, and a little background are enough. Año also said he has already ordered PNP Chief General Debold-Sinas to look into the death of Rolando de la Cruz, who lost consciousness while waiting in line at the community pantry set up by actress Angel Locsin in Barangay Holy Spirit, Quezon City last week. He said the investigation will determine the possible liability of the actress and village officials over the incident. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Chris Crismundo.
Senator Christopher Bongo is pushing for the inclusion of employees of the Professional Regulation Commission in the A4 priority group. Senator Go said these employees who are proctors and watchers for upcoming professional board exams are also considered essential workers who need protection against COVID-19. In March, a total of 52 confirmed COVID-19 cases were recorded in the PRC Central and Regional offices, prompting the Commission to reset the nursing licensure examinations from May 30 to 31 to November 21 to 22 this year. Due to the growing calls from nursing graduates, the PRC COVID-19 Task Force has recommended for the vaccination of the agency's frontliners, personnel, and members of professional regulatory boards, volunteer proctors, and watchers. Still to come, local government officials and an indigenous people's leader speak up on the move to defund the government's anti-insurgency body. And the Agriculture Department is optimistic of the recovery of the country's coconut industry. Back after a quick break, this is the PNA Newsroom.
Pangalagaan ang sarili laban sa Coronavirus Disease 2019. Hanggat maaari, umiwas sa mataong lugar. Iwasang hawakan ang ilong at bibig, maging malinis sa katawan at ugaliin ang wastong paghuhugas ng kamay. Takpan ang ilong at bibig kung uubo o babahing. Umiwas sa mga taong nagpapakita ng sintomas ng coronavirus disease gaya ng lagnat, ubo at sipon. Magsuot ng face mask kung kinakailangan. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa. Kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
President Rodrigo Duterte likened the country's medical frontliners to Filipino hero Lapu-Lapu as they fight amid the prevailing pandemic. The president's message came as the country celebrated on Tuesday the 500th anniversary of the Filipinos' victory in the Battle of Mactan. In a pre-recorded speech, Duterte remembered how Lapu-Lapu and the brave warriors of Mactan fearlessly fought off the foreign invaders who threatened their homeland and way of life. He said the occasion celebrates not only the gallantry of the country's pre-colonial ancestors, but also new heroes who described as worthy heirs of Lapu-Lapu's legacy. Duterte also enjoined the nation to join hands in effect to overcome the pandemic by drawing inspiration from past and present heroes. Duterte signed Executive Order 103, calling for a Filipino-centric point of view in the celebration of the anniversary at Mactan, the Philippine part in the first circumnavigation of the world, and other related events. Meanwhile, Executive Secretary Salvador Medialdea, chairperson of the National Quintencennial Committee, led the wreath-laying ceremony at the Liberty Shrine in Mactan, Lapu-Lapu City. A simultaneous flag-raising ceremony was held in the shrine in various parts of the country. The president signed proclamation number 1128 declaring April 27 as a special day throughout the country to celebrate the quincentennial. The Battle of Mactan's anniversary is part of the country's quincentennial celebration, along with the introduction of Christianity in the Philippines and the role of the country in the first circumnavigation of the world. Malacanang said there may be a need for Congress to amend the law that will give the national government more teeth to defend the Philippine territories in the West Philippine Sea. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said the Baselines Law or the Republic Act 9522 has reduced the country's territorial sea from over 229,000 square miles to 34,600 square miles. Roque said it is about time to amend the law since it also disregarded Section 1, Article 1 of the 1987 Constitution by redefining the country's internal waters into archipelagic waters, practically giving foreign ships the full freedom to pass through Philippine waters. He recalled how he and other international law experts filed a petition questioning the constitutionality of the Baselines Law in 2009. However, the Supreme Court, in a decision signed by then Supreme Court Justice Antonio Carpio, struck down the petition for lack of merit in 2011. Roque said President Rodrigo Duterte was simply dealing with the consequences of the High Court's ruling. He said Carpio should be blamed for the loss of the country's territorial sea. Indigenous peoples and local officials in the South speak up about the proposal of some lawmakers to defund the government's anti-insurgency body. These lawmakers formed their opinion over the red tagging issues on some organizers of the community pantries. But what about the other programs that the task force is doing? Marita Moahe gives us the details.
Malacanang said the remarks made by spokespersons of the National Task Force to end the local communist armed conflict should not be enough basis to defund the group. This after some lawmakers sought to withdraw the task force funding over the alleged red tagging of community pantry organizers. Malacanang cites NTF-ELCAC's importance, saying it develops areas freed from clutches of communist terrorist groups. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said that of the 19 billion peso total budget of the NTF-ELCAC, 16.5 billion pesos is allotted to the Barangay Development Fund. Roque said National Security Advisor Hermogenes Esperon has already talked to NTF-ELCAC spokespersons, PCOO Undersecretary Lorraine Badoy and Lieutenant General Antonio Parlade Jr. to stop making statements about community pantries. Esperon, who is also the NTF-ELCAC Vice Chair, said Badoy and Parlade will cease from speaking about community pantries to avoid sowing confusion regarding the pantry initiative. Meanwhile, Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte said it is up to the national government whether to withdraw the funds allocated for the NTF-ELCAC. The city's 82 barangays are set to receive a total allocation of 1.6 billion pesos or 20 million each for the development in the areas. The said budget is allocated for road projects, water system, school facilities, health centers, electrification, and evacuation centers. A small portion is allotted for non-infrastructure projects. For Datu Ricomaca, representative of People's Mandatory Representative in San Miguel, Surigao del Sur, defunding the NTF-ELCAC would be a blow to the Barangay Development Program and would undo the gains of the government's campaign against the decades-old insurgency. He said the Barangay Development Program is critical in completely freeing the residents from the hands of the terrorist rebels. MECA called on the senators to reconsider their decision and instead consider the wider impact of the BDP projects on the lives of ordinary civilians. Meanwhile, a former member of the CPP-NPA said the lawmakers' move to defund the government's anti-insurgency body is an act of treason. Joy James Saguinho alias Kaamihan, who served as Secretary of Guerrilla Front 20 under Sub-Regional Committee 1 of the New People's Army Southern Mindanao Region, said the proposal to realign NTF-ELCAC deprives the people in the far-flung areas of the development they longed for years. She described the communist insurgency as worse than the coronavirus disease pandemic. North Cotabato Governor Nancy Catamco said senators should listen to the former rebels who experienced poverty and the hardships of being in the communist movement. She said she believes that President Rodrigo Duterte will not go against his mandate in realigning the government's anti-insurgency body to other projects. For Major General Ernesto Torres Jr. of the Army's 10th Infantry Division, the success of Executive Order No. 70 signed by President Duterte is just an inch away to total eradication with the help of the people as part of the whole of the nation approach. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Marita Muaje.
Lockdowns in some towns of Negros Oriental due to rising COVID-19 cases have slowed down the ongoing registration for the Philippine Identification System or National ID. The Philippine Statistics Authority or PSA said the towns of Mabinay and Siaton imposed a temporary lockdown in mid-April to prevent further spread of the disease while conducting contact tracing. The lockdowns have already been lifted recently. Meanwhile, Ayungon Town also announced a temporary lockdown from April 26 to 28. PSA Negros Oriental Chief Engineer Ariel Fortuito said they have to deploy some of the registration kits to other provinces by the end of May, as there are only 32 provinces that are currently undertaking the Step 2 registration. The PSA in the province is targeting to register until December this year around 400,000 people from the priority listing. In our business news, the Department of Agriculture hopes to reap the fruits of its labor towards revitalizing the coconut industry in the coming years. DA Secretary William Dar said bigger things are expected in the industry with the newly reconstituted Philippine Coconut Authority or PCA. Data showed that coconut planted on more than 3 million hectares contributed at least 10% to agricultural gross value added. Dar said the country now has ample resources to develop this industry due to the passage of the Coconut Farmers and Industry Trust Fund Law or Republic Act No. 11524. Meanwhile, the DAPCA has submitted the initiation stage of the Performance Governance System, a strategic planning and management tool. On April 23, the DAPCA was conferred with the Silver Trailblazer Award by the Institute for Solidarity in Asia. The DAPCA started to enroll in ISA's PGS in 2020 in anticipation of the duties and responsibilities entailed by the passage of RA 11524. The Duterte administration has accelerated the use of digital technology for government services to improve transactions in public offices. Trade Secretary Ramon Lopez said digitalization efforts are aligned with President Rodrigo Duterte's directive to ease queuing in public offices. Last January, the Department of Information and Communications Technology and the Anti-Red Tape Authority launched the first phase of the Central Business Portal, a platform where forms and requirements for business registration are provided online. Meanwhile, since the DTI launched the business name registration system, businesses were encouraged to pay online. DTI's financing arm, Small Business Corporation, also made available its zero-interest loan program online for micro, small, and medium enterprises or MSMEs. Digitalization has also been rolled out in the DICT, Finance, Bureau of Internal Revenue, Customs, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, Land Bank, Development Bank of the Philippines, and the Department of Education, among others. Up next, good jab. Over 40,000 people in Eastern Visayas get vaccinated against COVID-19. And a young man in Cebu goes on a long swim for a meaningful cause. Details ahead. Stay with the PNA Newsroom.
Alamin ang mga dapat gawin sa lugar ng trabaho laban sa coronavirus disease 2019. Ang mga kumpanya ay dapat magbigay ng face mask sa kanilang mga empleyado. Bukod dito, magbigay kaalaman din patungkol sa COVID-19. Siguraduhin malinis ang kapaligiran. Maglagay ng sabon at hand sanitizer sa mga palikuran. Siguraduhin ligtas at nalutong maigi ang mga pagkain sa kantina. Obserbahan ang kalusugan ng mga empleyado at katrabaho. Kung sakali man na mayroon silang sintomas ng coronavirus disease, gaya ng lagnat, ubot sipon at hirap sa paghinga, ay agad ipasuri sa doktor. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. Nearly 41,000 frontline workers and 1,600 senior citizens in Eastern Visayas have been inoculated with COVID-19 vaccines as of Monday. Those vaccinated include all the region's hospital personnel and the majority of frontline health service providers. Since March, the region has received 80,450 doses of COVID-19 vaccines. Meantime, the Department of Health asked senior citizens to register with their local government units for them to be included in the immunization against COVID-19. The region has about 82,000 health workers in the public and private sectors listed on the A1 vaccination priority list. Clevan Alegres, dubbed as Cebu's Little Merman, has become the first person to swim around Mactan Island. Alegres, a resident of Lapu-Lapu City, finished his 42-kilometer swim on Monday morning at the Liberty Shrine in Barangay Mactan. The 25-year-old open water swimmer swam for 17 and a half hours to circumnavigate Mactan. Alegres completed the trip to honor Cebuano hero Datu Lapu-Lapu in line with the 500th anniversary of the Battle of Mactan and to raise awareness on the importance of preserving marine life. Last April 5, Alegres also made a successful swim around the island of Olango, located east of Mactan Island. He completed the full swim around Olango in a total of 12 hours. And here's another look at today's biggest stories. The Philippines is closely monitoring the situation in India as it deals with a surge in COVID-19 cases as 2 OFWs died while 20 others contracted the disease in the South Asian nation. No let-up against corruption. The PACC says it will file cases against ranking government officials while others are undergoing lifestyle check. The country pays tribute to the heroism of Lapu-Lapu in the Battle of Mactan 500 years ago. President Rodrigo Duterte says frontliners in the COVID-19 pandemic embody the hero's valor. And improving public service, the push for the digitalization of government services continue amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, visit our webpage or head on to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, we tell stories that inspire change. I am William Theo. Good day, everyone.